She was sold at 19 to a man 3 times her age to settle her father's mob debts. This wasn't a screenplay. It was the chilling reality for the daughter of a feared Chicago crime boss. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we delve into a story not of gangsters and guns, but of the silent collateral damage left in their wake. A story of a princess who fell from her ivory tower into the deepest pits of hell, and her agonizing crawl back toward the light. In the late 1960s, Chicago wasn't just the Windy City. It was a kingdom ruled by shadows, and one of its most formidable kings was Marco the Hawk Castellano. As a high-ranking lieutenant in the Falcone crime family, Marco's influence was etched into the very concrete of the city. He ran real estate ventures, high-interest loan operations, and a network of enforcers that ensured his word was law. But at home, in his sprawling suburban mansion, he was simply Dad. For his youngest daughter, Ava Castellano, born in 1968, the world was a warm, protected bubble. Their family, on the surface, was the American dream. A powerful father, a traditional, gentle mother who embodied quiet grace, and an older sister. The Castellano home was a sanctuary of warmth. Despite being a man who could order a man's demise without a second thought, Marco was a doting father. He made it a point to be home for dinner every night. Weekends were for family outings. While a nanny was always present, Marco, a man whose torso was a canvas of intricate, fearsome tattoos, would insist on doing things for his daughters himself. In Ava's young eye, her father was a gentle giant, a hero whose business was just a vague concept, completely disconnected from the brutal reality of the mob. That illusion shattered when she was 7, a memory seared into her mind forever. She accidentally witnessed a scene not meant for a child's eyes. In his home office, the gentle giant was gone. In his place was the Hawk, his face a mask of cold fury. A subordinate was on his knees, reporting a failure. The man was stammering apologies, his hand trembling as he prepared to offer a penance of brutal self-mutilation. Ava fled, burying herself in her mother's arms. But the image was indelible, her father's terrifying anger and the sight of blood. It was then that Ava truly understood what her father, the man everyone called boss, really was. But fear wasn't her primary emotion. It was a strange, twisted form of admiration. Seeing the power her father wielded, the absolute control he had over the lives of others, made her feel proud. This pride became her armor when she started elementary school. On her admission forms, under father's occupation, she wrote businessman, but everyone knew the truth. She reveled in the fear and deference from her classmates and even some teachers. It was a distorted reflection of her father's power. She was Ava Castellano, daughter of the Hawk, and she walked the school halls with an unearned swagger. No one dared to cross her, but equally, no one dared to truly befriend her. The danger that clung to her family name was a wall between her and a normal childhood. Then, the kingdom crumbled. When Ava was still in grade school, Marco Castellano was indicted on racketeering charges and sentenced to federal prison. The Hawk was caged. Without his protection, Ava, her mother, and her sister were exposed to the harsh winds of a world that now sought retribution. The first vultures to circle were from within their own ranks. A once trusted associate of her father began visiting their home, claiming to be collecting on old family debts. He systematically drained their savings, leaving Ava's mother powerless and desperate. The sanctuary of home was gone, and the battlefield of school became unbearable. The fear she once commanded curdled into mockery. She was no longer a princess. She was the daughter of a convict. Classmates who once avoided her gaze now openly jeered. They threw her jacket and sneakers into a bonfire during a school event. During cleaning duties, she was assigned the foulest tasks. The taunt, "jailbird's daughter," followed her everywhere. Initially, Ava pleaded with her teachers, hoping for an adult to restore some semblance of justice. But the teachers, wary of the family's reputation, saw the bullying and chose to look the other way. They wanted no part of the Castellano drama. Feeling utterly alone and unwilling to burden her already crumbling mother, Ava learned to endure in silence. She counted the days, praying for her father's release, believing he would be the hero who would lift her out of this misery. Finally, when Ava was in 4th grade, Marco was granted early release for good behavior. The day he came home, Ava was electric with joy, running to greet the man she believed would fix everything. But the man who walked through the door was a stranger. 3 years in prison had broken him. Her hero, the Hawk, had been replaced by a listless, defeated middle-aged man. Out of prison, Marco Castellano was a ghost. He abandoned any pretense of running his old businesses. His days were a blur of cheap whiskey and self-pity. Different women, never the same one twice, would drop a drunken Marco at their doorstep late at night. Ava's mother would offer a quiet, pained thank you before enduring Marco's drunken rages and, often, his fists. Ava would try to intervene, to protect her mother, but her father's anger would only redirect itself towards her. Each blow was a punctuation mark in the story of her family's collapse. Over time, a toxic resentment festered in Ava's heart. She hated her teachers and classmates for their cruelty. She hated her father for his weakness. And most of all, she hated herself for being powerless. A dangerous thought took root. If she could be strong like her father used to be, no one would ever dare hurt her or her mother again. The turning point came when Ava was 12, now in middle school. Her older sister, already deep into a rebellious phase, took Ava under her wing. In the pulsing, hazy light of a downtown club, surrounded by the intoxicating trinity of loud music, alcohol, and cigarettes, Ava found a new world. She watched, mesmerized, as her sister commanded the attention of a crowd of men, their flattery a currency of power. It reminded her of the respect her father once commanded. That night, something in Ava snapped. She began to cultivate a new persona. She came to school dressed like a seasoned partygoer. She started smoking, drinking, and formed her own small gang of troubled girls, calling themselves the Black Vipers. Ava systematically hunted down every person who had ever bullied her, unleashing years of pent-up rage in calculated acts of revenge. Her reputation as a vicious delinquent spread like wildfire. Soon, students and even some teachers would lower their eyes when she passed. The fear was back, and Ava drank it in like a drug. It was intoxicating. Her life became a spiral of recklessness, street racing, brawling, experimenting with drugs, and sleeping with older men. It was a desperate performance of toughness. Her father, in his rare moments of sobriety, would discover her transgressions and beat her, pleading with her to stay away from the street thugs, blind to the irony that he was the one who had set her on this path. But to Ava, his words were meaningless. He was a coward. Her rebellion was a scream for attention, a desperate attempt to provoke the powerful man he once was. She was drowning and didn't know how to stop. In her 3rd year of high school, her recklessness culminated in a massive brawl that got her arrested. She was sent to a juvenile detention center for 8 months. In the forced quiet of her cell, away from the noise and the chaos, Ava experienced a rare moment of peace. She was released early for good behavior. The police, seeing a chance for her to turn a new leaf, even helped her secure a high school equivalency diploma. Her sister, consumed with guilt for leading Ava down that path, had also changed. While Ava was locked up, she cut ties with her old crowd, stayed home, and waited for her sister to return. Upon Ava's release, her sister enrolled her in a strict military. Ava, knowing her sister's intentions were good, agreed to go. Under the school's rigid discipline, Ava slowly shed her bad habits. She cut off all contact with her old friends. On weekend visits home, she would stay in her room reading. Seeing this profound change in his youngest daughter stirred something in Marco. He, too, began to pull himself together, making a genuine effort to enter the business world, determined to be the father she deserved. It seemed, for a fleeting moment, that the Castellano family was on the verge of a comeback. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Just as things were looking up, when Ava turned 18, the universe dealt them a final, crushing blow. Years of hard living caught up with Marco. He was diagnosed with a severe illness that required a massive amount of money for treatment. At the same time, his most trusted business partner, the one he was rebuilding with, vanished, taking all their capital with him. To make matters worse, the national economy was in a downturn. The weight of it all was too much. Marco Castellano, the former hawk, collapsed under the pressure, leaving behind a mountain of debt. The largest of these debts was owed to a man named Leo the Vulture Gallo, a loan shark in his 50s with a reputation for cruelty. Gallo's enforcers became a constant presence, their threats escalating. When it became clear the money wasn't coming, they took the house. The Castellanos were forced from their mansion into a dilapidated apartment in a slum. A sick father, a broken mother, and a mountain of inescapable debt. The pressure became too much for Ava's sister. Disillusioned and defeated, she packed a bag one night and disappeared, leaving the entire burden on Ava's young shoulders. Despite the chaos, Ava clung to her dream of a normal life. She continued studying, preparing for college entrance exams. She had the grades and the drive to get into a good university, but Leo Gallo had other ideas. Her dream of higher education was about to be extinguished in the most brutal way imaginable. Gallo's men continued their harassment, but now their focus shifted. One afternoon, as Ava left her community college prep class, a van pulled up. A group of thugs dragged her from the sidewalk, forced a drugged cloth over her face, and the world went black. From that day forward, 19-year-old Ava Castellano ceased to be a student. She became Leo Gallo's property. When she awoke in a seedy motel room, she fought back with all the fury she possessed. Her resistance was met with a savage beating that left her nearly dead. Later, the old loan shark sat by her bed and made her an offer. "You can be with me," he said, the words dripping with predatory ownership. In that moment, a chilling pragmatism took over Ava's mind. There was no escape. She could either die fighting or submit and, in doing so, perhaps settle her father's debt and protect what was left of her family. She stopped studying. She became the old man's live-in sex slave. For 3 years, her life was a living hell. Daily existence was a lottery of psychological torment and physical violence. The beatings were frequent and severe, often landing her in the emergency room with injuries she had to explain away with lies about falling downstairs. To ensure she would never leave him, to bind her to him completely, Gallo introduced her to heroin, feeding her addiction until she was his slave in every sense of the word, a slave to his bed and a slave to the needle. Just as she resigned herself to this being the end of her story, fate intervened once more. Leo Gallo, a man who lived a life of excess, died of one, a massive drug overdose. Suddenly, the monster was gone. The daily torture was over. But his ghost remained, etched into her very bloodstream. The addiction he had cultivated now owned her. With Gallo dead, her free supply was cut off. She was too ashamed to go to her sister, wherever she was, and she couldn't face her parents. She had no skills, no education, and a habit that screamed for service. The desperation was a physical thing, a clawing emptiness in her gut. She saw only one path forward, the quickest way to make money to feed the monster inside her. She started selling her body. She entered a new kind of hell, a transient existence in dive bars and cheap motels, renting herself out to older men. She loathed every second of it, but it was the only way she knew how to survive. And then, in the smoky haze of a bar, a flicker of light. She was scouting for her next client when a man approached her. He was well-dressed, with kind eyes. His name was Nico Rossi. As they talked, she learned he was also connected to the Life, a second-in-command in a smaller crew. Perhaps it was this shared world that made her feel safe enough to open up. She told him everything, her past, the abuse, the addiction. She braced herself for the disgust, the judgment. Instead, she saw only compassion in his eyes. That night, nothing happened between them. They just talked until sunrise. Nico started seeking her out, telling her he wanted to be with her, to truly know her. For the first time since she was a little girl, Ava felt seen as a person, not an object or a liability. It felt like a second chance, a lifeline from God himself. She decided to grab it. She quit the bars. She vowed to get clean. The withdrawal was a trial by fire. It was a journey through the deepest circles of hell, her body racked with pain, her mind a landscape of crawling insects and terrifying hallucinations. There were nights she couldn't sleep, days lost to agonizing pain. When the cravings became unbearable, she would beg Nico to tie her to the bed so she couldn't run out and score. For 6 long months, he stayed by her side, a constant, unwavering presence. And with his help, she did it. She got clean. Her journey moved him profoundly. Nico Rossi, a career mobster, decided to walk away from it all. He proposed to Ava, wanting a normal life with her. They pooled their money and moved to a new city, opening a small, cozy diner. It was the fresh start they both desperately needed. But the quiet life of ordinary people was harder than they imagined. The diner demanded 16-hour days, 7 days a week, and barely broke even. Then, a call from home. Her mother had suffered a massive stroke. Despite all the pain and resentment, the love for her mother was a deep, unshakable root. Ava rushed back to be by her side during her final days. After the funeral, she brought her frail, aging father to live with her sister, the two of them pooling resources to care for him. Meanwhile, the diner was failing. The financial strain was immense. They made the painful decision to close up shop and move back to Chicago, hoping to find better work. Life became a grueling routine of low-wage jobs, working double shifts just to make ends meet and send money to her sister for their father's care. Then, another call. It was her sister, her voice strained. She needed to borrow money. Ava was confused. Her sister's family wasn't wealthy, but they were stable. The truth tumbled out. Her brother-in-law was a compulsive gambler. He had lost all their savings and had taken out huge loans from dangerous people. The specter of debt collectors, of threats and violence flooded Ava's memory. She swore her sister would not suffer the same fate she did. Nico, with his characteristic generosity, agreed immediately. They sent their entire savings to pay off the debt, but a gambling addiction is a ravenous beast. Less than a month later, new collectors were at her sister's door. The cycle was repeating. Her sister, wanting to help her husband through his darkest hour, refused to consider divorce. Ava felt trapped, pouring what little money she had into the black hole of her brother-in-law's addiction. After weeks of agonizing, her sister made a devastating choice. Refusing to drag her family down with her, she filed for divorce. The strain of it all, the endless cycle of debt and disappointment, proved to be the final straw for Ava and Nico. Their relationship, forged in crisis and sustained by hope, finally fractured under the relentless pressure. They separated. Alone again, Ava threw herself into work, working day and night, partly to send money to her sister, but mostly to numb the pain of her own shattered life. Just as she helped her sister find stable ground, another call came. It was the one she had been dreading. Her father had terminal cancer. He refused treatment, unwilling to be a further burden on his two daughters. In 1997, a 29-year-old Ava Castellano stood by her father's hospital bed to say her final goodbye. Before he slipped away, Marco the Hawk Castellano, the man whose power and weakness had defined her entire existence, whispered his last wish into her ear. He told her to live a good, healthy life. He acknowledged that her past had been destroyed, but begged her not to give up on her future. His final words broke her. She fell into a deep depression, spending the next few years as a walking ghost. The final, unthinkable blow came in the form of a letter. It was from her sister. The relentless cruelty of life had become too much for her to bear. She had decided to end her own life. But in her final words, she passed the torch of hope to Ava. She begged her to live for both of them, to carry their shared hope and build a better life. Now she was truly alone. Every person she had ever loved was gone. But carrying the final wishes of her father and sister, Ava, like a cockroach that refuses to be crushed, decided to stand up one last time. She took her meager savings and moved to a quiet, rural town. Walking through the empty fields in the profound silence of her solitude, she began to reflect on the decades of chaos that had been her life. She decided to write it all down, to document the pain, the abuse, the despair. Not for self-pity, but as a warning, a message in a bottle for others lost in similar storms. Her formal education was non-existent, her writing skills poor. So for 2 years, she dedicated herself to learning the craft. She painstakingly wrote her story, pouring every traumatic memory onto the page. In 2004, her memoir, Daughter of the Hawk, a mob story, was published with a tiny print run of just 1,000 copies. She expected it to disappear without a trace, but she had underestimated the power of her own story. The book caused a sensation. Sales grew exponentially, quickly surpassing 100,000 copies in the US before being translated and sold across the world. Ava Castellano became a national topic of conversation. Book signings, interviews, and a legion of fans followed. The book made her wealthy, but more importantly, it made her free. She finally had the normal life she had only ever dreamed of. She found joy in the smallest things: buying a designer bag, adopting a cat, a small gift from a fan. Each was a symbol of a happiness she had earned. From a mob princess to a human plaything, from the abyss of addiction to the peak of literary success, Ava Castellano was reborn at 36. Her story is a testament to the ferocious resilience of the human spirit. It serves as a stark reminder that even when life drags us into the deepest darkness, we hold the power to create our own light. If you find yourself trapped in the mire of your own life, remember Ava's story. Hold on just a little longer. That persistence might be the very thing that leads you to the dawn. What are your thoughts on this incredible journey of survival? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more compelling stories every week.